The heartbeat of any firehouse across the city of New York is the kitchen table. It's where we break bread, break balls, and break everything in between. They say all the world's problems can be solved at a firehouse kitchen table. I don't know how true that is, but what I do know, it's what I miss the most. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the kitchen table. If you've been following the show, you know who I am. It's Kenny D. This is my kitchen table. Thank you guys for following, sharing, liking, subscribing. Continue. Let your friends know. Thank you so much for the support. I really, really appreciate it. If you're new to the kitchen table, welcome. This is a channel dedicated to spreading mental health awareness in the first responder community, but not exclusive to it. The only reason why I gear towards first responders is because I have 30 years of first responder experience, military, law enforcement, and fire department. But like I said, you do not have to be a first responder who have experienced some sort of mental health issues in the past. Sadness, thoughts of suicide, depression, anxiety, fear, anger. We've all been there. Civilian or first responder, doesn't matter. Welcome to the kitchen table. Saved the spot for you. Thanks for coming. So, what I want to say, before I start, what I want to do is give a shout out to my buddy Matt. Now, if you listen to the show, you heard the episode of my helmet getting smashed in the firehouse, in my new firehouse at 59 engine. And one of the things that I had on my helmet was a Mickey Mouse pin shaking a fireman's hand. I believe they issued these after 9/11. So my daughter gave me the pin. But the helmet gets smashed, the pin gets smashed, goes flying, disappears, whatever. The other day I got in the mail, I guess he had listened to it, and this is what I got. I got the pin. He sent me the pin from Mickey Mouse and the fireman. I know they're big Disney buffs, so I just wanted to say that this means more to me than you can possibly imagine. I don't know if you guys can see that on the camera, but if you're listening on Spotify, Amazon, or Apple, it's the pin. It's a yellow fireman shaking Mickey Mouse's hand. So Matt, thank you so much. This means the world to me. Thanks. And it's going right back on my helmet right here. I'll pin that up later. So thanks a lot. Appreciate you guys. One of the things that I would like to talk about real quick today, I was doing statistics and stuff like that just so I don't sound like I'm talking out of my ass, but something came across my Facebook page yesterday. Today is March 5th, and I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram, but I'm not on Twitter or TikTok or Snapchat or any of the other things. But on Facebook, since I'm trying to spread this message of mental health awareness, a post came across my Facebook page from Battle of the Badges, and March 2nd was the 1-year anniversary of a kid named Colin Rossiter. He was a police officer with NYPD, and he only had 16 months on the job, but he was involved in some sort of critical incident that was so traumatizing to him that he just couldn't get over. Who knows what it was? I don't know what the incident was. This just came across my page. I don't know if it was a shooting or if he was involved in the death of a child. Who knows? I don't know. But whatever that incident was, he couldn't get over it. And he sadly took his own life 1 year ago on March 2nd, 2023. So I just wanted to, say that is very sad and just give a memory out to police officer Colin Rossiter. Who knows what this kid was thinking, what he was going through, if he reached out for help, if anybody saw it on his face. It's so hard to see what somebody's going through because it's in your mind, but you can see physical ailments and you can ask them if they're all right. But if they're going through something mentally, you just don't know it. Maybe he hit it. He was a young kid. He was a good looking kid. And it's really, really sad. At 22 years old, he took his own life. So part of what I'm trying to say is, and I know 3 officers from the past, 3 that have taken their own lives. Guys that I worked with, guys that I had beers with, guys that I've were friends with on Facebook after I left the police department. Sadly, 3 of them taken their own lives. It's unbelievable. I don't know if any of them were seeking help. I have a feeling they weren't, but I don't know. I don't know if anybody saw the pain that they had. I don't know. You can't see that stuff. But sadly, it is a very, very real problem in the community of especially law enforcement and other first responders, paramedics, firemen, the stuff that we see on a daily basis, the stress that we deal with every single day, the incidents that we come upon are so traumatizing, and you try to put that stuff in the back of your head, on the back burner, and you never talk about it. It just builds up and builds up and builds up, and you don't know how to deal with it. And a lot of people don't like to go seek therapy or go on medication or whatever the case may be. You do what you want to do. My therapy was always the kitchen table at the firehouse. I went through so much stuff, and I never went and sought help. Maybe I should have. But when I got on the fire department, after I got over a lot of things, sitting at the kitchen table without even knowing it, just talking to the guys, going over incidents, going over fires, going over traumatic EMS incidents that we've had. And I'll get into a lot of those on future episodes. But that was my therapy. So if you're going through something, seek help. Make a phone call to somebody. Reach out. Reach out to a family member just to talk to them. Sometimes that makes you feel better. That being said, rest in peace, Colin Rossiter. That being said, I got a confession. I was a little off my game this weekend. Everybody knows, if you've been following the show, that I'm on a daily program and I like to get up early and work out and eat right and take cold showers and all that shit. And sometimes it could sound a little preachy, but that stuff works for me. I've found that it works for me unmeasurably. I can't even tell you. And I'm not going to preach to you. I'm not some fitness influencer or nutritionist, but I was off my game this weekend. I got up a little late, not too late. I ate pretty good, but I didn't go to the gym one day. I didn't do my cold showers. I didn't do the self-reflection in the morning. So I was really off my game. And it affected me. It affected me in my mind. I started feeling demons creeping in a little bit angry, a little bit on edge. I started thinking about trying to up my game with this podcast and getting some more cameras and new microphones and how to mix this thing and audio and all this shit. And it was a little overwhelming. And I was harping on that shit, trying to look at cameras and seeing if I really should take that next step and make the investment and get good equipment so I could start doing interviews and do it right. But I was a little overwhelmed, so I was off my game. It bothered me. So I figured I'd get on here. I was a little inspired this morning to tell you guys that if you are on a program that works for you every single day, whatever the case may be, whatever it is, whether it's working out or eating right or just doing your daily routines, and you get off that game, it's okay. We're human. I want to be relatable to everybody. I think I am relatable to all you guys. You get off your game. People have families. People go on vacations. People go away for the weekend. People have kids they got to take care of. It can throw you off your game. If you do get thrown off your game, it's okay. We're human. Try not to let it bother you too much, but don't let it go too far, because if you let it go too far, it'll snowball. And then it'll just be downhill. And then next thing you know, it's 2 weeks where you haven't been on your game, you haven't been on your program, and it'll really fuck with you. It'll certainly fuck with me mentally. If I'm off my game for a week or two, it's brutal. But we're human. That's what happens. Life takes over sometimes. Be cognizant of that. Be mindful of that. And get back on that game as soon as you can. Get back onto the early schedule. Get back onto the working out. Get back onto eating right and all that stuff that you do that makes you feel better. Don't beat yourself up over it too much. So that being said, another thing I wanted to talk about real quick was, before I'm going to get into a fire story. I got a pretty decent fire story that really affected me mentally, physically. It was brutal. But I'm going to get into that in a minute. One thing I wanted to talk about real quick, though, was one of the things that, for me, growing up, part of my mental psyche or how my mental state would be sometimes was the natural feeling of fear. Humans have fear. And sometimes it's really hard to talk about, especially if you're like an alpha male, in quote, alpha male, or A-type personality. You never want to show fear. But everyone has some fear. Everyone has some sort of fear. I have fear. You have fear. We've all had fear. And being in the fire service, having fear is it's actually healthy almost. Fear will keep you alive. If you don't have, somebody once told me, a very good instructor in the academy told me, if you don't have, he told the whole class, if you don't have fear, if you don't have a little bit of fear going into a fire, you're either inhuman or you're a liar. And I truly believe that. But the thing is, it's how you control that fear. I've always liked to tell the young guys coming into the firehouse that fear is healthy. Fear is good. Fear will keep you alive. What you do with that fear, it's okay to have fear, but what you do with that fear is what matters. Fear is the measure of a man, in my opinion. If you use that fear to focus, if you use that fear to focus on your task and go do your job, even though you still have fear, then that's bravery. If you have fear and you shut down and you turn the other way, then that's a problem. Especially in the fire service or in law enforcement or some type of job where what you do is scary to most people. But you still have to do your job. Military guys. I'm a big anybody who knows me knows I'm a big Navy SEAL fanboy, right? I love these guys. I've had the pleasure of working for some of those guys in the civilian world. I've had the pleasure of hanging out with them, meeting them. I was always a fanboy. I read all their books. I listened to their podcasts. I can't tell you what a fan of these guys that I am. And now getting to meet them and work with them, it solidifies how I feel about these guys because they're all gentlemen. They're all good dudes. You know, had beers with some of them, had meals with them, worked for them, hearing their stories and stuff like that. But one of the books that I read about Navy SEALs was one of the evolutions or one of the training things that they went through out in like Arizona or Nevada was they would go rock climbing, like free rock climbing. And they'd had this instructor who was a free rock climber, meaning I guess he didn't use ropes. He didn't use anything. I have no idea. So he would teach these guys to rock climb, free rock climbing, I guess. I don't know if they were on ropes or not. I can't remember. But anyway, what the guy said was he was petrified. He was so afraid of climbing this rock. You know, he'd get so far up and he's afraid he was going to fall and he would almost freeze up. And then this guy would like come climbing up right next to him like, hey man, you know, all you got to do is focus on 3 feet in front of you. And I'm putting my arm out. You can see it on the video or I'm telling you guys on the podcast. I'm putting my arm out. So your arm is about 3 feet. My arm is probably only like 2 feet because of how small I am. But figure 3 feet. 3 feet in front of you is what he would preach. That means 3 feet where your hand goes next and you pull yourself up. And then 3 feet where your other hand goes. And then 3 feet where your foot goes. And it's just, you do that. You keep focusing on the next step. 3 feet is like your next step. So in the fire service, I used that. I took that with me from that book. And actually one of the guys that I used to work for told me, he was telling a story to a guy and I heard him tell that story. So he's been to that training. So it really made me think and go, wow, you know, I've had fear for so long, but I've always been able to push forward through that fear. That's why I do shit like this, like podcasts and fire department stuff and cop stuff, because I had fear, but I always was able to push forward past that fear, but I still had it. It was there. I didn't run from it, but I had it and I used it to focus and I used it to fucking push forward and do the job. So on the fire, especially in the fire service, when I really started getting into it, I'd use that fear that I have of going into a fire or letting my brothers down. And that was really more the fear that I had. It wasn't so much the fire and dying in a fire. Because I knew that obviously there is a certain level of danger to this job of going into a fire. Anything could happen to anyone, and it has been proven time and time again. It's a super dangerous job, and I wasn't blind to that, obviously. But my fear, I wasn't so much afraid of the fire or dying in a fire. I had talked myself into that for so many years that I was just, if it happens, it happens. I wasn't going to give up, or I wasn't gonna just not do my job and accept it. But it wasn't the fear of dying in a fire. It was my fear in the fire department was more of doing the job and doing the job right and letting my brothers down and letting civilians down and having them respect me and look at me to know that I can do my job. I was on that line when I caught work, and when I say catch work, for people that don't know, I mean catching fires. When I say I'm going to work or we're going to work, we're going to a fire. My fear was letting my brothers down. My fear was looking like I didn't know how to do my job. And yes, it takes a while to learn. You never, ever stop learning on that job. You could do 40 years and you'll always learn something. My fear was not being able to stretch that line and put the fire out, or take that door, or bust the window open, or if I had to pull somebody out, or doing this or doing that. It was not being able to do the job. So the fear that I had was that, letting those guys down. I was on that line fighting that fire for my brothers. Fighting fire for the guys on the line. Fighting that fire for the guys in the truck searching the rooms. Fighting that fire for the guys on the floor above or on the roof or below me. Everybody's doing that. Everybody's fighting that fire for each other. And it's hard to explain. I think military guys in combat, you're in combat in that moment fighting for those guys. Yes, in the overall picture, you're fighting for your country and all that stuff. And on the fire department, in the overall picture, you're fighting to save that building and for civilians and for the city or whatever, what have you. But at that moment, when you're stretching that line and you're putting water on that fire and you got guys next to you and behind you and above you and they're taking doors and everybody's doing their work, you're fighting for those guys. And my fear of letting those guys down was way higher than my fear of dying in a fire. It sounds crazy, but that's the truth. You know, humans have two things: fight or flight. It's just a natural reaction. Either you're going to stay and focus and fight, or you're going to turn around and run. It's just a natural reaction. So I focused on my job. Each individual step I was able to focus on because I had fear. Putting my boots on, putting everything in the same way, getting dressed the exact same way. I could focus on each individual step to calm my mind down. So I put my boots on, I put my suspenders up, I put my jacket on the same way all the time so I can continue to focus. And everything was done, and I'd get in the rig and I'd put my mask on and I would take a big deep breath like that, and I would just reset everything. It would calm me down because the anxiety and the fear was building up in me. And the two things that I really had that I can make a difference with, and I'll edit this out, is when I really started having fear and anxiety is when a fire comes in, but in a part of the city that's close to us, but we didn't go. But it's close enough where if it gets bad, we would go to it. That's when the anxiety would start building. It would be 2 a.m. and you'd hear fire coming in like the South Bronx. And you're like, all right, that's pretty close. Let's take a listen. All right, 1075, fire going on in the Bronx. Oh, second alarm. Things are starting to go bad. They're finding fire other places. You start hearing on the radio, the volume of transmissions are going up. Guys are starting to get anxiety, louder on the radio. You can hear, any fireman can hear when a job is starting to go bad. Boom, they hit a third alarm, and now you're up, and the guys are up, and you're like, all right, we're going to go to this. We're going to go to this. And you start thinking, and the anticipation of going started messing with my head. Like I'd start getting nervous, and that's fear. Nerves are fear. Those are the fires, and then boom, the tones would go off, and we'd go. And now I'm really, really had to focus on that. Like, okay, we're going. Things are bad. You know this job is bad. And you're going into a very bad situation. That is when my fear and anxiety would kick in the most. Crazy, I know, just thinking about it. But the jobs that came in that were quick, that we had to be first do, I didn't have a lot of time to think or get anxious. The only thing I could think about was getting my gear on right, sizing up the building, putting my stuff on, getting ready to go, thinking about my position. I didn't have the time to get anxious or think about that. It was all muscle memory of what I had to do. Then you show up on the job and you see fire out the windows, you see smoke. I just was able to do my job. Those weren't the jobs that I had the anxiety or the fear. It was the jobs that come in that became second, third, fourth alarms, that we knew we were going to go because shit was going bad. Guys were getting pulled out, civilians everywhere, fire everywhere, chaos. Just those were the ones that would get my blood going, the anxiety. So that being said, I just want to say that fear is normal. Everybody has fear. So if you do have fear, if you're a tough guy and say you don't, you're a liar. You're bullshitting, man. You know, that's what I like to say. Everybody has fear. It's what you do with that fear that really makes you. So like I said before, fear is the measure of a man. You either turn and run, you live another day, but then you got to look yourself in the mirror, or you stay and fight, and you have the pride of doing that. Admitting having fear is tough. It really is. But I had it. We all have it. So admit to it. It'll make you feel better. Believe me. And you're not a pussy because you have fear and still do your job. You're a pussy if you have fear and you run. So that's, whatever. So now I want to get into a quick fire story. A fire story that really changed my thinking on the job. And I was still early on in my career at 59 Engine. I think it was the summertime. It was maybe late spring, early summer, but I can't be too sure. We had a very young crew. I was on the nozzle. We had two truck guys in between who had the backup in the door. The guy backing me up had the same amount of time that I did. The guy on the door was a probie from the truck, and the guy on the control, and I'll go over positions another time. But there were 4 positions on the line for the fire department at that time. Nozzle, backup, door, and control. And the guy controlling the stretch was a very young fireman in the engine. I don't know if he was right off probation or if he was about to get off probation. Anyway, we were very young on the job. And the chauffeur was a senior guy, and the officer was a covering guy. His first time in Harlem, I believe. Great dude. Anyway, I got the nozzle. By this point, I've been catching a lot of work. I've been learning the job. I'm getting confidence. I'm doing the right thing. Most of the jobs I caught were pretty, and I'm not going to say easy, but the fires went out pretty quick. I did a really good job. I just was doing good, and I was getting confident. I wouldn't say I was getting cocky, because the second you get cocky is the second you get you start, taking shortcuts and not doing the job right and putting your hood down and not strapping everything up right. I wasn't cocky. I was confident, because I was like, oh, these are this is the fires that I'm getting. Man, I can handle this. I'm really going to become a good engineman. I love fighting fire. I love putting water on fire. Anyway, call comes in. It's early in the morning. I want to say it was like 6:30, but it was light out or just getting light out. Call comes in for fire. We're on 133rd Street. Call comes in for, I believe the address was 155 or 153, 132 Street. And that's directly below us. All right, we're on 133. The fire's on 132. The next corner over, we make a right out of quarters and go towards Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard, make a left, and then make another left onto 132 Street. It's a down block. It goes east. 133 goes west one way. 132 goes east one way. Pull up. We get the call for fire, right? 132 Street, I believe the address was 155. Could be wrong. It's a 5-story tenement. At the time, those tenements there's a row of them. They were vacant. Not even under construction, just completely shitholes. Pop the doors, get the call for fire. I'm gearing up, focusing, not really thinking about anything else but my muscle memory is putting on my gear on because I have the nozzle. And I'm talking myself into, okay, this is what I have to do. Just like I did every tour, just like I did every run. So I was already in it. I was already in the game. Pop the doors, and me and the probie on the engine guy that had control, we walk out, and I'll never forget the look on our faces, or his face. We look at each other, and he takes a big sniff, and he's got time now. He knew what he was doing. He was a good fireman. He's a really good fireman. And he took a sniff, and he went, and we looked at each other, and we just nodded. We're like, okay, we're going to work. And like I said before, when I say we're going to work, meaning we're going to a fire. If you can pop the doors and you smell that smoke right away, you know you're going to work. So I'm like, okay, here we go. Going to work. Turn around the corner. Chauffeur drives around. We pull up, and you can see the smoke. You could smell it. We go up, they take the door, stretching the line up to the top floor. So now we're on the top floor, smoke coming from the top floor. And I'm waiting. I'm masked up because the smoke is very, very gray, but you can still see. Like it's not totally banked down yet. And I'm standing at the top of the stairs. Now, again, this building is vacant. So there are cinder block walls covering up each doorway and splitting the apartments right in half, and the hallway right in half. So there's a cinder block wall cutting the apartments in half and the cinder block walls covering the apartment doors to go into the apartments. So now we don't know where the fuck to go. There's smoke everywhere and it's getting darker. It's getting grayer. It's starting to turn brown. You got to start reading the smoke. So now this fire it's somewhere. But believe it or not, they can't find the fucking fire. They're popping holes in ceilings. So now they got to start taking cinder block walls down. These truckies were taking cinder block walls down with mauls and axes, the back of axes and shit like that, and getting into apartments and going in and coming out and going, we can't fucking find it. So now I'm on air. Everybody's on air. I got the line charged and I'm just waiting. And as I'm waiting and as I can't find this fire and as the smoke's getting darker, my anxiety's building. Like, let's go to fucking work. We got to do this. But I'm starting to get like, anxious. And you could hear the saws going on the roof and the whole thing is working. So now they can't find the fire. They search 2 apartments. The cinder block wall that was separating the hallway to the other 2 apartments, we can hear somebody behind there. Eventually, it was the OV from, I believe, another company. I'm not going to say what company it was because who knows listening. But he says to us, he goes, it's back here. It's back. He was saying something like it's back here. And the boss says, how did you get there, bro? How did you get back there? He was like, I came in through the rear. We couldn't get to the rear. We're already in the front. So these guys had to take another cinder block wall down. And as they started taking those bricks out, banging them down, the smoke was so thick and so black, it literally was like a blanket that just went over your eyes and just banked down the entire top floor. I mean, literally lights out. Picture, you could see, and then all of a sudden you just fucking put a pillow right over your face. You can't see anything. And now it's fucking hot as balls. They get this wall down without being able to see the rest of it. We climb over. I climb over with the line without being able to see anything. The wall is like half down. We get over the wall. This guy is here. The boss is here. The backup guy is getting behind me. We get to the door, and this door wasn't cinder blocked up. So that's why they had the wall up, because those 2 apartments didn't have cinder blocks on the apartment doors. He says to us, he goes, it's to your left and it's roaring. He said it to me, not to us. He said it to me. He was this close to my ear. He was so close to my ear and my mask. He said, it's to your left and it's roaring. So I go, okay. So we go in, open the door, and I go to my left. And it's fucking hot as balls. It's the most heat that I've felt in a fire so far. And I was like, holy shit. Like it immediately hit me. And it kind of threw me back for a second because all the fires that I have caught so far weren't this hot. So, okay, I got the line and I go to my left and I hit a wall. And I was like, where the fuck is this fire? I can't see anything. I knew I'm at a wall, so I turn around and I'm going back the other way. And it's still so banked down and so hot, lights out totally. I cannot see flames. I cannot see orange, but I can feel the heat. It's getting hotter, so I know it's that way. They teach you in the academy not to open up the line to put water on smoke. That's what they teach you. At this point, it was so hot, I was so crunched down that I said, fuck this, and I opened up the line directly above me and just hit the ceiling as best I could. I knocked down ceiling. I fucking cooled it down as best I could. And I shut the line down, and as I did that, then I saw it all rolling. I saw the fire all rolling above me. And if I wasn't so focused on doing my job, it actually was just a beautiful sight. As crazy as that may seem, seeing the fire rolling across the ceiling and that hot, it was just a beautiful sight. So now I see the fire. Now I can operate. And I open up, and I'm fucking hitting it and moving and advancing forward and taking a beating because it just wouldn't cool down. And there was shopping carts and all sorts of shit in this apartment because I believe vagrants were living in it. And I'm getting hung up on shit. And I'm just trying to push forward, and guys are behind me. And you still can't see anything. And the saws are going. And they're cutting the roof. When there's a fire on the top floor, the truck always cuts the roof to vertically vent the fire. It eases up so much. And to see if there's fire in the cockloft. The cockloft is the separation between the roof and the top floor. And fire gets in the cockloft, it spreads throughout the building and possibly throughout other buildings. So the truck is cutting the roof. And thank God they were cutting the roof. And hearing that, you can't hear anything else. And with the line going, all you hear is the saws and the line going. The communication is almost nil when that's going on. Because you, as a nozzle man, you can't hear shit. You're just putting water on as much fire as you possibly could. And I'm taking a fucking beating. And it's still so hot. And I'm crunched down. And I'm thinking, and now my vibrer alert's going off. When your vibrer alert on your mask goes off, that means you're running out of air. So now I'm running out of air. And I'm like, motherfucker, this fire it's not out yet. And I'm still pushing forward. And I'm getting fucking tired. And I'm draining my body. And the heat's got me pushed down so far. I don't know about the guys behind me. But the heat had me pushed down so far that I'm already low to the ground. So I can't imagine how hot it was for those guys. I was pushed as low to the ground as I possibly could. And the saws stop. And all of a sudden, everything fucking lifted. The smoke, the heat, the fucking everything, the steam, all lifted. And as everything was lifting, I stood up. It was almost like the only way I can give you the analogy of, it was like, you know those marionettes that are on like strings? I felt like I was on strings. I was one of those marionettes that I was laying on the floor. And as the truck took that roof and cut it open and vented it, everything lifted, I lifted up with it, and I stood right up. It was like the hand of God himself came down, reached through that roof, and pulled me up and stood me up. So I was able to continue, at least fight as much fire as I could on my feet. I had such a newfound respect for the truck and what they do when that happened. It was amazing. Like we break each other's balls. The truck doesn't fucking put out fire. Oh, the engine does. Like we have a lot of fun with that. There's like a nice rivalry. But I truly, that's when I knew how important vertical ventilation was. That's how important the truck guys are. I had such a newfound respect for those guys because not that I thought it was over, but I was done. I had physically exerted everything that I had. I felt like I couldn't push forward anymore. I was running out of air. And as a matter of fact, I did run out of air and it stuck to my face, but they had lifted. All the smoke and heat had lifted already, but there was still tons of fire in the cockloft. And the apartment next door had the exact same conditions as this one. So this fire went to a multiple. Second, third alarm, I think. I'm not even sure. I know it went to a multiple. So I open up the line now that I'm standing up, and I'm trying to put out the rest of the fire. I get to the rear, the back room, but there's still fire in the cockloft. I got no air, so now I'm fighting the fire in the cockloft in one spot, and then it would pop out in another spot, and then I hit that spot, and then it would pop out in another spot, and then I hit that spot, and it would pop out in another spot. And now I'm taking my mask and I'm lifting it to get air because the mask is sucking to my face, and I couldn't go any further. I put out as much fire as I possibly could. They got another line going into the next apartment, so physically the line was now pushing me down all over the place. I was now a detriment to the line. I was now a liability. So I had to hand the line off to my control man, who was a 59 engine guy. There were two truck guys behind me. Normally, you would hand the line off to your backup man, who would be in your company. But these guys weren't in my company, so I gave it to the probie on the control, who's a 59 engine guy who knows what he's doing. He knows who he is, and he put out some fire. And at that point, the chief had ordered us out. The boss grabbed us all and pulled us out. But I was so humbled at that fire because of the heat and the smoke and the conditions and the truck guys taking down cinder block walls. And especially at the point where I thought I couldn't go any further. And then the truck opened up the roof and made that vertical ventilation and took all the heat and fucking smoke out of that apartment and raised it through the roof. And I was able to stand up, and we were all able to stand up and do do as best I could the rest of that fire. I hung in there till I had no bodily functions left. And it just totally humbled me. And I had a newfound respect for fire, for the truck, for the engine, and for what we do. So it was an amazing experience. I'll never forget that fire. Taking down cinder block walls. And we would run into that boss for years. And he'd go, hey, man, you want to take down any cinder block walls? Just amazing. Those guys were just the best. Fucking unbelievable job. But anyway, that's my fire story for today. 132 Street, cinder block walls, heavy fucking fire. Got my ass kicked. Fucking mask stuck to my face. That's a bad feeling. When your mask sticks to your face and you can't breathe, you got to lift it. It's just very scary. And that's part of having fear. We all have fear. I talked about that. So that's my story today. I hope you guys liked it. Today is Monday. I hope everyone has a great week. And it is March. It's the month for the Irish Pride. And that's a big month for the fire department. It'll be 2 years this month that I retired. I'm super proud. Thank you guys for coming. Remember, it must be true if you heard it at the kitchen table. And I'll see you at the big one.